Hey YouTubers, today's project is to change the driver's side CV axle, half shaft or transaxle, they're all the same thing really, on my 2002 Grand Caravan Sport. I had to change the passenger side, so there's also a video on my website for that one as well. I'll leave the link below. Don't forget to check out the show more, which is really the description block below the video here, where I list tools, chemicals, part numbers, etc. Things like that. I'll also put a lot of tips down there as well. So check that out. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Here's a quick list of tools that you'll need. You'll need a 4x4 block of wood to block the back tire. You'll need a jack stand. I only find you need one to only do the side that you're on. I usually didn't find it necessary to lift the other side. You'll need a long pry bar in order to remove the lower ball joint on the control arm from the spindle assembly. You'll need a small pry bar to remove the CV axle from the transmission. You'll need a torque wrench that goes 180 foot-pounds. You'll need a 1/2-inch drive breaker bar. You'll need a 1/2-inch drive 32mm deep socket to remove the nut for the CV axle. You'll need an 18mm wrench. You'll need a 17 or a 19mm combination wrench. It's not really used on any nuts or bolts on the car, but it's used to double wrench the 18mm combination wrench to tighten things up or loosen them up. You'll need a large heavy-duty hammer. You'll need a pair of needle noses to remove the cotter key. If your new one doesn't come with a cotter key, you'll need to get a replacement too. So check it at the store when you buy your new CV axle. You'll also need a lug nut wrench to take the tire off, and you'll need a service manual. Either a Haynes or a Chilton's or one of the other brands will work just fine. You'll also need a hydraulic jack to lift the vehicle up, and you'll need the part that you're going to use. I bought mine at CarQuests, which is Advance Auto down here. They're both the same store. There's the part number. There's also multiple part numbers from other vendors you can buy from. This doesn't have to be the one, but this is the one that I chose. Here's some consumables you'll also need. You'll need some kind of penetrating oil. I like PB Blaster, but WD-40 or any other will work just fine. You'll also need some multi-purpose grease. You'll need a rag. You'll need some brake clean, and you'll need some paper towel. Some optional tools to also help are the tie rod end removal tool on the left, a pickle fork to help remove things that get a little stuck, preferably that lower ball joint or maybe even the tie rod end, and also a ratchet combination wrench, 18mm, to speed things up on a few spots. Go ahead and block the back wheel. My driveway's on a slope and it leans toward the back, so I put the block behind it. If your driveway leans towards the front, we'll put the block in front of the rear wheel. Also, set the emergency brake. Make sure the car is in park. It should be if it's off. If you don't like working on hot concrete, put you a little mat. I like a kitty mat. It's pretty good. Also, give yourself a little shade if you need it. I put the video of my little, what I call garage shade tarp on my channel. I'll put a link in my description about that as well. Next, take your hydraulic jack and set it underneath where the body bolt is. Right here. That's a good place to jack the vehicle up. Then take your jack and lift it up, your jack stand, and lift it up a little bit. Then jack up your car. Oh, don't jack the car up all the way just yet. Just put some tension on it for a little added safety. Next, we're going to take off 3 of those lug nuts and loosen 2 more. I'll show you which ones to do here in a second. You'll note that on the hubcap, at least on Caravans that have those plastic hubcaps, there's some that go all the way around and they got a little tab in there. Most of mine are broke off, but that doesn't matter. It'll still do the job. You have 2 of them. They are typically the 2 directly away from the stem valve. The 3 that you want to remove are the other 3. Just loosen these 3. That's all. Do not take them out. Only loosen them about a 1 turn, if that. Half turn to a 1 turn. That's it. Put the lug nuts someplace that you can find them. Now that you've got 3 of the lug nuts out on the holes that go all the way around, and the 2 holes that are left, and you've only removed these about 1 turn, that's it. Go ahead and remove the hubcap. You might have to wiggle it a little bit. Here's the reason that we didn't lift the car up all the way and left the tire on the ground. It's because you have to break this nut loose here along with this cotter key. So let's get this cotter key out of here. To remove the cotter key, take the pliers, needle nose pliers, big ones, and straighten out the cotter key. Once you have the cotter key straightened out, then you can go ahead and remove it. Don't lose that. If it's still in good shape, you can reuse it. If you're worried about that, just put a new one in. Then remove these pieces here. You'll have a little spring that keeps this from rattling. You'll have the key lock right there, nut lock I should say. Then we'll have to get this off. In order to get that off, you need your 32mm deep socket, and you'll need a 1/2" drive breaker bar to go with it. I want to show you something real quick here. Notice that the threads right here start off very thin and then they get thicker and they go clockwise. That means we're going to have to take this nut off counterclockwise like this, which is normal on most vehicles. But some vehicles, they'll have reverse threads, or what they call left-handed threads. So it's always a good idea to check which direction the threads are going off. If they're going off in this direction, well then it's a right-hand thread and you'll have to screw it counterclockwise to get it off. Set the breaker bar and the socket on there so that they're a little bit towards the ground. Then use your foot to break it free. If you find that's not enough, you can remove the jack handle from your hydraulic jack and put it on the edge, on the end of the breaker bar for a cheater bar, and then do it. Pay very close attention to where it comes together. If this starts to separate too much, which I've had before, then you'll have to step up to a 3/4 inch breaker bar and 3/4 inch socket, or you'll have to get an impact wrench on it. Place your foot on the breaker bar and then push down. Pay attention not to let it swing out so you don't fall down and break your leg or something. So just push down on it really tight like that, and that's it. Then you'll go ahead and remove it the rest of the way. Once you get it loose, you can remove the breaker bar and do it by hand, and it'll be a little quicker. Don't forget the washer too. You don't want to lose that. Now take all these pieces here, along with your lug nuts, and set them inside your hubcap. Remember Christmas Story? Ralphie? Just don't cuss, alright? You can leave that right there until you get the remaining two off, but don't take those off just yet. You still have to put the car up on a jack stand, so let's do that next. Jack the car up so you'd have about 6 inches of clearance under the wheel. The reason is because you're going to have to crawl under this car, and you're going to have to break the CV axle free from the transmission. And you're also going to have to separate the lower ball joint and the tie rod end. We'll get to that next after we put the jack stand in. Place the jack stand between those two body mount bolts for that little flex plate underneath there. It actually is right underneath the main support bracket for the whole front end assembly, which is that aluminum piece right there above that round bar. This is a really good place to put it. A little side note, when jacking up your vehicle, it's usually best to put it on a spot where the frame bolts to the main part of the car body. You can put jack stands under anything that's tube framed like that, but you don't want to put it underneath something that's made out of just flexible sheet metal right here on the bottom where somebody had done this here. If you're not sure where to jack up your vehicle, consult a mechanic or a friend who does mechanics, or check your owner's manual. It should tell you exactly where to jack and where you can't jack. When lowering your jack, you need to pay attention not to drop it too fast. Otherwise, your jack stand could look like my jack stand, where I'd lowered my F350 a little too quick, and I actually broke one of the ears off of this thing. One of the things to note is why we use jack stands. The only thing holding that up is like a little 25-cent O-ring in there. Do you really want to trust your life to that? So never work onto a car that doesn't have a jack stand underneath it. I know people say they've done it for years and they've never had a problem, but I've actually seen both jack stands and hydraulic jacks fail. Trust me, it'll only happen once and you'll regret it the rest of your life. That's if you live through it. To lower the jack, just turn the jack handle slightly counterclockwise and be gentle about it so that the vehicle drops slowly. Can you hear it? Yeah, the seat, the jack stand found its seat. Okay, after you lowered the vehicle onto the jack stand, you don't have to remove the jack right away. A lot of times I'll leave it there for a little added insurance until I get the tire off and place it under the car. I'll show that to you. Now you can remove the lug nuts. If for whatever reason you forgot to go ahead and remove the axle nut, you can have a friend step on the brakes while you remove it with your breaker bar and your 32mm deep socket. Now that you've got the lug nuts loose, put all the lug nuts and your washer and your axle nut and all that in here. The reason you want to put your axle nut in there is so that you don't forget to put it on and tighten it before you put the hubcap on and try to go down the road. That wouldn't be good. Now you can remove the tire and the hydraulic jack and slide the tire underneath the car for added insurance of safety. Like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to disconnect the tie rod end. And that's this item right here. This is what actually steers the car. It's controlled to your steering hydraulic ram over there. And there's a nut that holds this in. So let's get this off. That is an 18mm, by the way.